First of all, I want to apologize for not having the depth chart out on Monday. I saw some tweets that you guys sent out with some blank depth charts, which is always fun and appreciated. But the reason we did that is I didn't want to put out a depth chart that wasn't going to really align with what was going to show up on the field on Saturday. And I didn't think that was the right thing to do for you. I didn't think it was the right thing to do for us. So we waited until we got some more medical information. So it would be a little bit more up-to-date and a little bit more accurate. So if that put you guys in a tough spot, I apologize, but that was the reason why we did it that way. Feel terrible for Naeem Wortman-White. He will be out for the season, which is obviously significant. Feel for Naeem because he's had 2 years in a row now where he's missed the season and has worked really, really hard. And has had an unbelievable attitude and from a leadership standpoint as well, so that's always difficult, obviously at a position where we are already thin as it is. So obviously we're here to support Naeem every step of the way, but I wanted to make you guys aware, and that's one of the pieces of information that we just weren't ready because some doctor's appointments, some medical evaluations that needed to happen. So Audrey, I see your blank depth chart there, so fill that in now. Temple review offensively. Continue to create explosive plays, which I think is going to be really, really important for us moving forward. The way people are defending us, some of the style of defense, that we're going to see in this league and across the country, that's going to be really important. The thing we have to do is we got to hold on to the ball. We got to be more ball secure. That's something that's going to be very important to us. Something we've done a fairly good job of in the past, and we need to make sure that we get back to doing that. Defensively, I couldn't be more proud of Brandon Smith, young man that joined the program as a walk-on, has worked to get better every single day. He's been an unbelievable teammate, unbelievable student, just really ingrained in the fabric of everything we do. I'm just really, really proud of him. He had only played 3 plays total in his career, 3 plays total. I think he's been here 4 years and he's played 3 defensive snaps. He played 57 plays on Saturday, had 8 tackles, had a .5 tackle for loss, 2 quarterback pressures, 1 pass breakup, and just really played well. So I'm really proud of him. It's a great example of, you never know in life when opportunity is going to knock, professionally, personally, whatever it may be, and you be ready when the time comes, and he did that. And I think not only did he do that, but I think the confidence that he displayed in how he played and how he called the defense, I think it helped our whole defense, to be honest with you, because I think losing Naeem, there's a little bit of concern there, and already not having Jason Cabinda or Brandon Bell, our 3 starting linebackers out. His leadership and his seniority was instrumental. So couldn't be more proud of him and excited. We got to be consistently gap sound. I thought we did a better job of that. Each week, but we need to continue doing that, fighting to make sure defensive linemen, linebackers, that we are gap sound. And then special teams eliminate the penalties. I think we're doing some better things. I don't think there's any doubt about that on special teams. But we got to eliminate the penalties. Guys that are trying to create big plays by blocking extremely well for John Reed and other guys, and they're just getting a little too handsy. So we got to do a better job there. Coaching staff players of the week on offense was wide receiver Chris Godwin. On defense was Brandon Smith and Parker Cothran. And then on special teams was Tyler Davis. So, some information, on Michigan. Tim Drevno, their offensive coordinator, does a good job. They want to establish the run. They're a big physical team. They want to establish the run with their offensive line. I think they're very skilled at the tight end position and at the receiver position, very skilled there. They want to run the ball. They want to play action pass. They're obviously averaging a bunch of points a game, I think over 50 points. Defensively, Don Brown, who me and Don worked together. I've known Don for a long time. I think Don's a very, very good coach. Not only have I coached with Don, but coached against Don multiple times. Big, strong, talented defense that he's taken over. Very, very talented in the front. I think very talented in the secondary. Must be able to handle their pressure and movements. They're a big pressure, big movement team. And then on special teams, Jay Harbaugh, lots of playmaking ability of their units. Obviously, Jabril Peppers has a big impact on that. Jabril was a highly recruited guy out of high school, track athlete. Everybody was aware of him. I think this year, to me, he really jumps out on tape. How physical is and how fast he is on defense, and then his playmaking ability on special teams and sometimes on offense as well. So impressed with those guys. So that's a few pieces of information I want to give you guys, but more than happy to open up the questions now.
We'll start with Rich Scarcella from the Reading Eagle.
Good afternoon, James.
Hi, Rich.
Dave, how does Michigan's speed on defense compare to your first three opponents? And you have to be aware of where Peppers is on every play on defense?
Yeah, I think you do have to be aware of where Peppers is. You pretty much got a pretty good idea of where he's going to play. They really, the way we look at it, they really play with three safeties. They list him as an outside linebacker or nickel, but they really, the way we look at it, they play with three safeties in a lot of ways, and he's one of those guys. I think their speed is a factor, but I think the biggest thing is just how big and strong they are. We have 12 seniors on our team. They have 13 seniors on the two deep on defense and 13 seniors on the two deep on offense. They're just a big, strong, physical, mature team, and then they do have some speed aspects. I think Jabril does that for them on defense, special teams, and offense. Their receivers do that as well as their tight end. It's a challenge. There's no doubt about it.
Bob Flounders, Harrisburg Patriot News.
Hi, James. How you doing?
Good, Bob. How are you?
I'm good. James, you mentioned Michigan's passing game. I wanted to ask you about the challenge, the physical challenge they present, the tight end and those two wideouts, and what it's going to mean for your safeties and your corners. They made an awful lot of plays against you, those three guys, in last year's game, and just the challenge that they present for your safeties and your corners, and even your linebackers.
I think it really starts with stopping the run. What happens is when people are able to have success in this style of offense, running the ball, then you start to overcompensate to stop the run, and then people get out of position. And then they're put in conflict in play action pass, whether it's safeties or whether it's what we call trap corners, where they run support with the corners in a cover two style defense, or whether it's the linebackers. Those guys are put in conflict. So, being able to stop the run and be really physical across the defensive line and gap sound and things like that is going to be really, really important, because if they can establish a run and play action pass you, then they're really difficult to defend. And obviously, when they have playmakers like their two wideouts, big, long, fast, athletic guys, as well as their tight end, who's very gifted route runner and receiver, that causes some real challenges for you. So I think the biggest thing that we'd like to do is make them one-dimensional. They do have a new quarterback who's starting for them. He's not a young player. He's been in this system now for a couple of years. I think he's a junior. So, you'd like to, make them one-dimensional and force them to drop back and throw the ball.
Derek Lavar, Spokesbear Times leader.
Hi, James. How are you?
Good, Derek. How are you, buddy?
Doing well. James, as far as Naeem goes, how's his attitude been? You talked this summer about, when it happened last year, not wanting to be the guy himself. He wanted to be involved, be around the team. And have there been any conversations about exploring a sixth year for him if it's not really for that?
Yeah, the first thing, with Naeem is obviously he handled the setback last year really well. This year we were still kind of working through kind of his, physical and mental confidence, and it was growing and growing each week. And then on Saturday, to be honest with you, myself, the doctors, and really Naeem, we thought at first that he was just, that he was more or less, kind of scared that something had happened, but it really didn't. And then he hopped up and actually felt good and kind of jogged around, and we thought he was okay, but it didn't play out that way, obviously. So he's got another setback in front of him. I think Brandon Bell, I know I went into the doctor's office with him, and Brandon was there with him as well. He's been an unbelievable support for Naeem and the coaches as well, and the doctors and trainers. So we'll just see how this whole thing plays out. The most important thing we want to do is get him healthy. He's already graduated, which is awesome, and we'll see what the future holds.
Mark Woodruff, Allentown Morning Call.
Hi, James, how are you?
Good, Mark, how are you, buddy?
Good, thanks. You were mentioning turnovers earlier. I wanted to ask you, how do you approach making turnovers, like turnover prevention rather, a focus without turning it into a stressor or something that lingers in your guys' mind?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think, you gotta make the point, you gotta show the evidence, you gotta drill it every single day, which is all the things that we do. I think, for us this year, it's fumbles, and we've been pretty good with that in the past. So, we do a ball security drill, which really deals with how to carry the football and how to protect the football every single day in circuits. We'll continue to do that. We'll continue to show them all the statistical evidence that shows the importance of controlling the football. And then obviously as quarterbacks making decisions with where to go with the football, and then receivers' mentality when the ball's in the air, that nobody comes down with it but us. It's all those things. So we're just going to keep talking about it and stressing it like we always do. But you're exactly right. You can't go too far in either extreme with anything in life, or it won't have the type of effect you want it to.
Frank Bodani, York Daily Record.
Hi, good afternoon, James.
Hi, Frank.
Hi. We've heard a lot about Coda Farmer's athletic ability, his potential. We've seen him some, but where is he at in his development? How can he help you more defensively? What kind of player can he be?
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen the most recent depth chart that's come out, but he's listed at linebacker. So he's going to create some opportunities for us as well. Sam linebacker with Manny, Manny Bowen, both those guys at the field linebacker position. He was predominantly an offensive player in high school. We think his best position long term is outside linebacker. He's a guy that's really kind of had to fight to keep his weight down. At one point I think he was as high as 227 playing safety. I think now he's around 222, somewhere in that range. But genetics are telling him one thing, and I think obviously playing running back in high school and playing some defensive back, some safety, that's where he was most comfortable. So it's a transition that we think is going to happen. He did it a little bit since he's been here, the linebacker position, especially being out in space, not necessarily in the box. The problem is when you play 22 personnel people or 12 personnel or 21 personnel people, they're going to get in heavy sets and try to pound you. That linebacker's no longer to the field. That linebacker's no longer in space covering a receiver. He's in the box, which is a completely different world, being a space linebacker compared to a box linebacker. So that's some of the things that he needs to continue to grow at. I know he's excited about the opportunity, but he does. He has a lot of potential, but there is a transformation that has to happen from going and being basically a running back in high school to a defensive player. Some guys pick those things up faster than others.
Joe Giuliano, Philadelphia Inquirer.
Hi, James.
Hi, Joe.
Michigan's defense is allowing opponents, has allowed opponents only 4 conversions on third down out of 38 chances, and your third down conversion rate right now is 27%. Can you put a finger on why your conversion rate is so low, and is there more concern about it this week because Michigan is so effective at stopping opponents on third down?
Well, a couple things. They're very good on third down. I think a lot of it is because they're really good on first and second down, which is the complete opposite of us. If you look, again, with analytics and things like that, really most of your first down should not come on third down. They should come on first and second down. We're doing a much better job of that. We've improved dramatically in that area. Now, the next phase is obviously to be better on third down. We need to do a better job of that. We've also been pretty good on fourth down. So that's an area of emphasis for us. That's a focus point for us, getting to manageable third downs. When we don't pick up a first down on first and second down, we still got to get into a manageable third down situation, be more efficient. That is a focus point for us. But I think really first and second down is kind of tells the story for both teams, tells the story for their defense, and tells the story for our offense.
Mike Gross, Lancaster Newspapers.
Good afternoon, James.
Hi, Mike.
it seems like there's a trend in football where guys are about to cross the goal line and they drop the ball, sort of as a celebratory thing or something. Your guys don't do that, and I wonder what you would do if one of your guys did that, and what's your general approach to the idea of celebration that might hurt the team?
Yeah, you don't want to do anything that hurts the team. We look at those things as selfish things. You should be celebrating with your teammates. I think you guys probably see me throughout the game talking to players, not screaming at players, but talking at players when maybe I feel like they're bringing a little bit too much attention to themselves and not with their teammates, and that's somewhat common in today's day and age. So just talking to our guys about celebrating with their teammates. The other thing is when I see examples like that, as you guys have heard me say before, we show it to them. It's funny that you bring that up because I'm showing them in the team meeting today that Clemson. I think one of the examples that you're talking about, I don't know if everybody that's here today or is listening saw, I think it was South Carolina State versus Clemson, is another example. Not only was it scoring, he caught a kickoff return in the end zone, flipped it to the official, and just ran out and thought the play was over. The play wasn't over. Clemson ran down and recovered the ball in the end zone for a touchdown. The official, you see the official kind of like back away, like, don't give it to me. But the whistle hadn't been blown, and he didn't take a knee. You have guys like you're talking about that just when they're about to cross the end zone, they relax and drop the ball. And now that we have cameras right on the goal line, that makes it even easier to see some of those things. I think it's probably happened more often in years past, but the technology, didn't maybe show it. So, just whenever I think guys make mistakes, that can be, a negative impact on our team, or guys that do things that maybe are embarrassing to themselves or negative towards themselves. We try to show them examples of that so maybe we can learn from other people's mistakes and not have to make them ourselves. Constantly showing them. I think I told you that we showed some NFL clips the other day, 2-minute situations when receivers got out of bounds and receivers didn't get out of bounds, and the positive consequences and negative consequences to those decisions. So we're constantly trying to use examples like that within the Big Ten, nationally, and even in the NFL to teach football lessons and teach life lessons.
Donnie Collins, Scranton Times-Tribune.
Hi, James.
Hi, Donnie.
Connor McGovern played a little bit more at guard for you guys last week. What are you seeing on film from him that you really like, and how much progress have you seen from him from the start of camp last month until now?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest difference with him compared to some other guys. There's a lot of excitement about Gellerstedt and Will Fries and Michael Menet in our program. McGovern came in, obviously graduated early. Him and Gellerstedt was just a little bit further ahead, mentally as well as physically. I mean, he's over 310 pounds now. Got a lot of reps during spring ball. Has got a lot of reps during camp. We've been able to get him a number of reps each game, and that number I think is going to continue to grow. He's a big physical, talented guy who's athletic, is very coachable. So we're pleased. We're pleased with how Derek Dowry's playing, but Connor McGovern has shown that he deserves a few reps, and we also feel like keeping Derek Dowry fresh for 4 quarters. And allowing Connor to get in there and get some reps. But he's just a young guy with a lot of potential, and the only way to build on that potential is getting him some experience.
Megan Ryan, Pittsburgh Post-Gazette.
Hi, Coach. I was just wondering,
Hi, Megan.
with the injuries at linebacker, how, I guess, have those kind of younger guys really stepped up in this time, and how have they kind of been handling the situation of being, I guess, more thrust into the spotlight?
I think Manny's handled it well. Manny's doing more and more good things for us. I think Cooper's done some nice things. The thing that Cooper's able to do is play multiple positions as well, which helps. He can play the Mike position. He can play the Will position, which is our 2 box linebackers. So that helps. We'd like to create a little bit more flexibility with Manny as well, because that would allow us to be able to kind of move parts around to get our best guys on the field. If Koa continues to develop the way we'd like him to, that allows us to also be able to move Manny, around, and also be able to move Cooper around. So now we're in a situation where it's not It's not just about, what positions they understand. It's also about getting the best 3 guys on the field. So, I'll be interested to see how this plays out this week. Brandon Smith obviously has gained a lot of confidence, individually, and also confidence of our coaching staff. So, but we want to create some flexibility with those guys as well.
Corey Geiger, Altoona Mirror.
Hi, James.
Hi, Corey.
Michigan has scored a lot of points. Their offense has been really potent. What have you seen from them on film that makes them so difficult, and what your defense going to have to do to kind of slow down some of those?
Yeah, some of the stuff that we kind of visited about earlier is, they're big and physical on the offensive line. They really are. They're experienced. I think what makes them difficult to defend is the combination of the big, fast wideouts that they have. Chesson and Darbo have been really, really good. And then Butts as well. Those 3 guys are big-time players that all decided to come back this year and make a big impact for them. And they have, so between the offensive line, the tight end, and the receivers, I think the tight end and receivers, are special. And then they work in, the tailbacks. They got big physical tailbacks as well. And then obviously Jabril Peppers, being able to work him in a little bit, whether it's fly sweeps or whether it's running back or whether it's wildcat quarterback. It's a nice combination of big physical experienced players and then speed, to be explosive and make big plays. And it's the combination of what I said earlier about, being able to get their running game go and then be able to put your safeties and linebackers in conflict with play action pass.
We'll open up to questions here in the room. Raise your hand, we'll get a mic to you.
Hey James, how
Hi,
are you? Obviously the ball security, especially the fumbles, have not gone unnoticed by you and your staff or the players, but what kind of emphasis this week, and what specifically are the ball security drills you guys run through during practices? What has the emphasis increased, kind of to follow up Mark's question, without causing any added pressure in that situation?
Yeah, I think, again, what I've already stated, that we'll do ball security drills every single day. And we do that, basically we do 5-minute blocks, and that's a period where, we go from station to station. So, it could be as simple as the monkey roll drill that people have been doing since the beginning of time, where the natural reaction is when you go to the ground is you take the ball away from your body to support yourself, and you can't do that. Or, really just running and tapping with one hand, whether it's running through a gauntlet of players that are trying to strip it out, whether it's receivers catching the ball and turning, whether it's tucking the ball on the outside. So we've got between 6 and 9 different drills that we do, and we typically have 3 stations. Coach Moorhead watches those stations, and then the position coaches put them on, and they kind of rotate their guys through it. So typically during that period, I take a certain amount of periods that I go with the defense and I write on my shell. We're typically doing a pursuit drill or a tackling drill during that period. So I kind of rotate. Typically I'm on the defensive field during that, but yeah, it's a circuit that we do. We've done it, since I became a head coach. It's been pretty good when it comes to ball security. But again, it's something that we're going to focus on as a fundamental every single day. Again, our process should not change week to week unless we're not doing something that's appropriate. And then we make changes and we learn and we adjust. But I think the biggest thing is fundamentals and techniques and having an awareness of how important the ball is.
James, how are you?
Good job.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Hey, question for you. With you guys were able to put together some long drives against Templeton. Like I think one was 10 plays. I think another one was 9 plays. With their ability to put up points out to 53 a game, how important is tempo for you this week in your offense as a weapon?
Yeah, I think maybe if you were playing a tempo team, then maybe that becomes a little bit more of a factor. They're not. I mean, a lot of their points have been defensive scores and have been special team scores. Colorado had 1 punt blocked. They had another punt where they blocked it into the butt of one of their personal protectors, which basically essentially is a block. And then I think they had a kick return or punt return for a touchdown. So they had 3 non-offensive touchdowns, and they've been like that, kind of so far this season. They have had home field advantage. I think they have 8 home games this year. but they've been able to score points, not just on offense, but on defense and on special teams. So I don't know if the tempo aspect is really that much more important this week than any other week. I think the important thing is possessions. We got to make sure that we are capitalizing on each one of our possessions on offense. And then on special teams, we can't allow them to get, points either through block kicks or big returns, which is going to be a challenge. I remember last year, I think we were playing Rutgers, and their return man the week before we had played them had 2 returns for touchdowns. I think when we played Maryland, I think Likely was one of the better return mans in the country at the time. So we've been in a similar situation like this before. And we got to make sure that we do a great job of that. And I think, obviously with Joe Julius having awareness of this and understand the importance of touchbacks or kicks that are going to pin him into the corner of the end zone, or in punting with Blake Gillick, making sure he's getting the hang time and pinning people as close to the sideline as possible. All those things are going to be important.
Hey, James.
How you doing?
Good. Brandon Smith was voted or named co-defensive scout team player of the year last year. I'm just wondering if you could highlight some of his efforts on that unit and maybe why he earned that distinction and how he did so.
I think there's a pretty good correlation if you look year in and year out. The guys that make scout team offense, defense, or special teams players of the year usually go on and have significant impacts the following season. And it's his approach. His approach has been really consistent since he's been here. There was a time, I don't know if people remember, where he was actually playing fullback, linebacker, then fullback, then back to linebacker. And really, anything we've asked him to do, he's worked really, really hard at it. I think Carl Nass has been a great example for our players of a guy that really took advantage of his opportunity, nutrition-wise, sleep-wise, workouts, practice, how he approached all those things. And Brandon's one of those guys as well. Brandon's a guy that I don't think you could ever look back and remember a day where he's had a bad day in the facility, where he hasn't practiced well on the field. He's been about his business every single day, and with that, he's been able to maximize his potential. So it's been pretty cool to see him. I sent him a text this morning just about how proud I am of him and how appreciative I am of him. So it's great. It's great to see. But he's got kind of all them characteristics. He's very mature. He's got a very good football IQ. He's got tremendous instincts. He's one of those guys in practice, you get frustrated with him on scout team because you'd be trying to do a play action pass, you try to do a fake with a reverse or something like that, and he'd be there, and you thought, sometimes you get frustrated because you thought he was cheating the drill, but he's reading his keys, and he's one of those guys. He just, he's more athletic than I think people give him credit for. He's big, he's strong, and he's just very, very purposeful with everything he does, and he's very driven.
Hey James, how you doing? Over here.
Good, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. I want to ask you about gap integrity. We talked about it a couple times. You've got a lot of athletic defensive ends and some athletic defensive tackles. It seems like at times you like to attack and penetrate in the backfield on the way to the football. How do you maintain gap integrity while also attacking?
It's a good question, but it's really kind of 2 different points. We've been hit on some plays where we've gotten really far up the field, created some scenes where the running back, or more times than not, it's been the quarterback on scrambles, where you just get lanes from depth. Guys being on different levels, if that makes sense. That's a different conversation than gap integrity. Gap integrity, we're talking about a guy that's responsible for the B gap and doesn't get in the B gap. He's in the A gap or he's in the C gap. You're talking about a guy that has the B gap responsibility, and now you have the tackle and the guard on the backside, scoop block, a combination block, to get him out of the B gap, and we're not fighting hard enough to stay in the B gap. So sometimes it's interesting. You may not be in the B gap, but you may have an offensive lineman or tight end in between you and your gap, and you may not be in your gap, but if you can press that offensive player back into your gap, you're still getting the same thing done, if that makes sense. So the space is a different issue, because now if you get on different levels and you have a really athletic quarterback, you may be gap sound, but there's space, and now it becomes an athletic deal. Is your linebacker athletic enough to tackle the quarterback or the running back on a draw play in space. That's a little bit of a different discussion than gap accountability. And sometimes with young players, we haven't been as consistent when it comes to gap accountability. We were much better last week than we were the week before. Does that answer your question?
Okay, I guess the idea of, like, for example, Kevin Givens is very good at getting upfield and disrupting plays in the backfield from the defensive tackle position. How do you maintain gap integrity if he's doing that versus reading and reacting and pushing a guy into the gap? Like
Again, that's my point. We want them to be aggressive.
Right.
And if you're responsible for the B gap and you can get penetration, we want that to happen, because now penetration can disrupt pullers. Say the offensive lineman or the offense is running a power play and the guard on the backside is trying to pull, and you got penetration in the opposite B gap, the guard's not going to be able to get through. So those things are positive. We don't want guys two-gapping. We don't want guys two-gapping and just sitting on a guy and then ditching at the last minute trying to make a tackle. We want to penetrate. But the important thing is penetrating in your gap and then forcing that runner, if he's going to run, he must run through the A gap, and the A gap is the Mike linebacker's responsibility, or the B gap is the Will linebacker's responsibility, or whatever it is. And now it comes down to being able to make that tackle consistently. So yeah, we want to penetrate. If we were an Okie front or an odd front defense with a true nose, with 3 defensive linemen on the field, a lot of those defenses, they're two gap, where they're going to have a big physical nose who's just going to knock the center back and then ditch to either A gap or whatever it may be, or he may be responsible for one of the gaps, and then the linebacker would have the other gap. We want to penetrate. We want to be disruptive. We want our defensive line to do that, but we can't get washed out of our gap. Is really the most important thing.
Now that you get a chance to go back and watch it, how do you think Miles Sanders and Andre Robinson graded out? And also, do you guys have to take any kind of precautions with Saquon? I know we talked in the spring about kind of limiting him to keep him fresh. Do you guys have to monitor at all in season what you do with him practice-wise?
Yeah, no. When we were talking about that in the spring, we were talking about that in the summer. That was getting to the season. Now we're in the season. It's not like we do live work. We're not doing any live work during practice. Getting ready for the game. So we're not doing that. So no. There is a part that you just have to look at total rep count, and that's where I think Miles really did some nice things. He put the ball on the ground, which you can't do, but up to that point, he did a really, really nice job. He showed that he can make people miss. He showed that he's explosive, so that was great. I thought Andre came in, brought a little bit different of an element, and a physical guy, big, strong, power guy. And is kind of Mr. Consistent, so very pleased. And then Mark has a role for us as well. Quickness, make you miss, those types of things. So yeah, I think that's what you're going to see. You're going to see Saquon tap out, and those guys come in and replace him. I think you're going to see maybe a series, a half, where we're going to get one of those guys in as well. And typically what we've been doing is, say the first drive, Saquon's in there, he's tapping for Andre the first drive. So now the second drive, when he taps, he's tapping for Miles or Mark or whatever it may be. And then if you go a drive where maybe it's a quick touchdown, maybe we score on the second play and nobody got an opportunity to tap, then we wouldn't go to the next guy. That guy would stay as the tap guy for the next drive type of deal. So that's usually discussions that we have during the week and finalize either Friday afternoon or Saturday morning.
James, Saquon had told us last week that after the Pitt game, after his fumble, he stayed awake just watching that play over and over again. Just kind of curious, how much of a perfectionist is Saquon, and how does that kind of spill over to the field?
I think most of our guys are like that. They want to do really well to help the team. They also understand if they make a mistake, it doesn't just impact them, it impacts their teammates. And they want to do well. So I don't think there's anything wrong with if you make a mistake in a game and do something that you would like to do better in the future. You study that. You study the tape. You study what you did. You study the scheme. You study the fundamentals and techniques of what you did and what you can learn from through that situation. I mean, that's what life is about. is about, going through some difficult situations or being put into a situation where you are challenged, and then how are you going to learn from that challenge and go to grow from that challenge. The hard part in the business world, the hard part in life, the hard part in school, the hard part in coaching is guys that don't learn from their mistakes. So I think, the fact that he went back and watched that play over and over again, or is replaying that play in his head over and over again, I think that's fine, as long as, like most things, it doesn't go to an extreme. He learns from it, he makes the corrections and moves forward, and that's what we got to help him do as well.
Hey, James.
Hi, Ben.
How are you?
Awesome, you?
Living the dream.
Me too, brother.
When Saquon went down, the next four...
I love how this started as like you guys refusing to say hi to me when I first got here, and now it's like these really nice pleasantries back and forth. It's good. It's been nice.
That's good.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you. When Saquon went down, the next 4 drives, you guys got 2 touchdowns, a red zone fumble, and a touchdown, and that is probably, despite your best efforts, not what would have happened last year when your best player goes down. I mean, what do you think that says about the progress that you've made over the past 12 months, and the fact that you've got more than one weapon that you can rely on offensively?
Ben, bringing up a positive point for me to comment on. I love it. Thank you. No, thank you. I appreciate it. It's awesome. I think it does. I think it speaks volumes about the direction that we're headed. You're exactly right. In the past, if we had one of our better players not playing well or not make a play or having to go down for a couple series and being out of the game, that we had a hard time overcoming that. Running back is a good position right now where we have created depth there and talent. And there's a lot of guys that can go in and run the offense and make plays that we can be successful with. You're starting to see that about the offensive line. I'm really starting to get excited about the offensive line. We are leaps and bounds ahead of where we were the last 2 years when it comes to pass protection. We still need to get more physical and nastier in the run game. But I see that. I look at Mike Gesicki, going in and making big plays as an older, more mature player now. I look at even Jonathan Holland got in the game. Pankos got in the game, and not only got in the game, but was able to get the job done. So yeah, we're starting to create more depth again. You guys have heard me talk about it, and you guys have wrote about that we're a young football team, but we're starting to develop depth, which we hadn't had. So that's exciting. We got to keep growing, we got to keep working, we got to keep developing, we got to keep staying positive. But I think that's a really good example, and it's a good example for our team. I think it's a good example for the fans and alumni. And again, I was kidding around, but I do appreciate your question.
Hi, James.
Hey, Andrew.
James,
Welcome to State College.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You mentioned your experience coaching with and against Don Brown over the years, and I'm wondering, jumping into the film this week, the primary differences you see with his defense at Michigan versus what you dealt with a year ago when they had DJ Durkin in that spot.
Yeah, Don was a defense coordinator at Boston College when we played him in the bowl game. Don was a defense coordinator at UConn when I played him at my previous school. And then obviously we were both together at the University of Maryland, for a number of years. So got a lot of respect for him. I think he's been doing it for over 35 years. He's been a head coach as well as a coordinator. Has had a lot of success. They're doing less at Michigan than what he did at Boston College. I think it's a combination of things. I think instead of him just running the package that he's been running forever and that he ran at Boston College, I think he shows up at Michigan. They were pretty successful already in what they were doing. I think he's taken some of those aspects of what they were doing the year before and blended it with some of the stuff that he believes in and has been doing as well. And I think he also feels like they have the size and the depth and the talent that maybe they don't have to do as much as what he did at Boston College, if that makes sense. Doing a really, really good job, but it is a little bit different than what he's done in the past, probably more similar to what they've done at Michigan. And it still falls kind of under the same family. I mean, that's why he was hired there, because I think they have similar philosophies and similar beliefs. But you can feel a little bit more of what they did at Michigan in the past in their package compared to just Don's pure scheme that he's been running before that. It's a blend.
2 more questions, start with Mike.
Hi, Mike.
Hi. All this talk about gaps. What do you say to your guys, and how do you overcome that gap in experience, those numbers you're talking about with Michigan and then a guy like Brandon? How do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, I think it's a couple things. I think number one, it's your approach and it's your attitude. We got an unbelievable opportunity. Go on the road into a great venue, another historical program, and do something special. But yeah, experience does factor in, and that's where talking football, explaining situational football, showing them examples on video of things that we're doing well in practice and things that we need to do better, things that they are watching, whether it's Monday Night Football in the NFL, whether it's other college games, trying to speed up that maturation process as much as possible, because you look at their tight end butts, you look at their wide receivers, I mean, those guys are different players now than they were 2 years ago based on their experience. So what we're trying to do is trying to speed up that maturation process as much as we possibly can. I think the other thing on offense is the explosive plays, because the more explosive plays you can have, you don't have to be right for a 16-play drive or a 14-play drive. I think that helps. Same thing on defense. I think if you can find a way, we talked a lot about turnovers, but if you can protect the ball on offense and create turnovers on defense, that is a huge momentum swinger in the game and creates more opportunities. Same thing, I mean, if you look at statistically giving up big plays on special teams, block punts and things like that, it's hard to win if you do those things. So eliminating those things. So I think it's talking football, it's teaching football, it's building confidence. It's us going into that stadium expecting to win, and with that mentality. And I think we have a number of players that feel that way. What we have to do is we have to increase that number between now and Saturday. So, you're always going to have a portion of guys that believe whoever we play, whether it's the Green Bay Packers or the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Philadelphia Eagles, that we're going to beat them if we play. Then there's that group that's on the fence that you need to convince them that we're able to win. And then you got some young players that are just still trying to kind of figure it all out. And what you're just trying to do is move as many guys as you possibly can into that category, so you go into that game on Saturday confident, excited for the opportunity. And, to me, this is why you come to Penn State, to play in these types of games.
Hi, James. In the past, you've talked. Good. How are you?
Great.
In the past, you've talked about your appreciation for Tyler Yajuan. In a game where special teams is such a factor, especially against Michigan, what does he bring to the table? Why is he so valuable?
Well, I hope that we don't mention his name for the rest of the season, because that's usually a good thing. I hope the next time we talk about him is at the award banquet after the season, because if you're a long snapper, the only time that anybody gives you any attention is usually when something bad happens. So I try to make sure that he knows how much we appreciate him. It's funny, Tyler Davis, for example, the other day I went up to him and apologized. I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys or not. Yaz kind of falls into the same category. It's getting to the point where I don't even say anything to them after we make a field goal, because it's just the expectation. And I felt bad. I went up to him and I said, I apologize, but it's actually a positive. I just take for granted that you're going to make the field goal and you're going to snap it perfectly, and we're going to go, get ready for kickoff. But he's been unbelievable. I mean, he's an ambassador for our program in every sense of the word. We do a guest coach program, which I think you guys have heard me talk about, when professors come and spend the weekend with us and get around our guys and get around our program. And it's amazing. Yaz is one of the guys that it seems like all the professors know and have a lot of respect for. He's one of these guys I think that's going to be unbelievably successful when his career is completely over. But I think he's got a chance to play for a long time. But he's a great role model. He is, we very easily could have named him captain. He basically is the captain of the specialist. He kind of runs that unit. In college football, you don't necessarily have a kicking coach. So those guys spend a lot of time, to be honest with you, coaching themselves during practice. In the NFL, you have someone assigned to those guys. So he kind of is, he's kind of the big brother, the father of the group, and he kind of keeps those guys organized and running during practice. But he's awesome. I mean, he's a guy that I would be, more than happy to babysit my kids or to tutor my kids in school one day. Or I mean, he's just that type of guy. He's awesome. I couldn't be more proud of him.
Thank you very much, Coach.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thanks. We'll be joined by